Call this meeting the North Adams City Council to order for December 10th, 2019. This meeting is being recorded. Will the clerk please take the roll?
Bona.
Here.
Buddington.
Here.
Cohen.
Here.
Harpen.
Here.
Hopkins.
Here.
LaForest.
Here.
Lamb.
Here.
Moran.
Here.
Wilkinson.
Here.
We have a quorum.
We have quorum. Please stand for a moment of silence, remembering Diane Hine, Officer Manager of the North Adams Board of Health for over 26 years, and Robert DeLio, who served several years as sealer and weight and measures for the city. And the pledge. Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of the minutes from November 26, 2019.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes approved. Hearing of visitors, 2 minutes on any agenda item tonight. Not hearing any, we will move to the first agenda item. Paper number 11,827, an order authorizing the use of premiums from the sale of bonds or notes in accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 20. This was in City Council November 26, 2019. It was voted to refer to Finance Committee and voted to postpone to the meeting of December 10th, 2019. What motion do we entertain?
Move to approve.
Second.
And
I,
discussion, yes.
okay. I'll just mention the Finance Committee didn't meet. We didn't have the time to meet. It was kind of short notice. We had the holiday. There was also a snowstorm where City Hall was closed that Monday. So in order to get a 2-day notice, it was difficult to, I think we had like 1 day to have a meeting, and we couldn't get everybody together to have that meeting. So we didn't do that. Counselor LaForest did pass on to all the counselors what he had received from the state auditors, and I think that was helpful. To me, I mean, it looks like this is just procedure. It looks like to me, the mayor can, tell me if I'm wrong or maybe explain it a little better than I, but it seems like we're just moving some short-term notes to bonds and long-term notes. It's about 3.2 million. And if there's any premium, we are approving that it be applied to the loans. So that's what it appears to me. Through the chair to the mayor, if he'd like to explain it better, that would be fine.
Sure. It's actually a section of law that applies to any borrowing. So the amounts you're talking about are amounts that have been authorized to be borrowed, and this was the point where they were going to bonding. So those are examples, but not the reason or the intent. This is a best practice recommended by bond counsel. So it's to say, if we realize any premium, which is to say an amount over and above the borrowing amount when the bond is issued, that is applied to the amount to be borrowed.
Other discussion? Councilor LaForest?
So I just want to say, following the explanations we received following the council meeting last week from Mr. Canales, and further review, there clearly is no objection to this, as both the mayor and Councilor Harpen pointed out. It is simply a matter of extending short-term borrowing into long-term bonding, which makes the best sense for the city. No objection.
Anyone else? Not hearing any other counselors. We have a motion to adopt is in order. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, roll call. Yes, it is a roll call. Roll call vote.
Buddington.
Yes.
Cohen.
Yes.
Harpen.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
LaForest.
Yes.
Lamb.
Yes.
Moran.
Yes.
Wilkinson.
Yes.
Bona.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Motion carries.
And I'd just like to say that my not particularly clear explanation was even less clear to the folks at home because Peter just turned on my mic. So everything I said wasn't broadcast. So
Hopefully
we're all
they
set now, though.
All right. Paper number 11,830, communication from Councilor President Bona on behalf of Northern Berkshire Community Coalition regarding complete street inventory projects with Williams College environmental students. This was in City Council November 26th and voted to postpone to the meeting of December 10th, 2019. Without objection, we'll file the communication and move to the presentation. You are up.
So I'm just going to do, my name is Amanda Chilson, and I am the Health and Wellness Coordinator at the Northern Berkshire Community Coalition, and have worked closely with these Williams College students on a complete street inventory project that they will present to you, as well as we'll be presenting it to the Complete Street Committee. But as a community embracing complete streets, it has been our goal to create a living document that would provide guidance on our locally owned streets, to be a helpful document when there's any routine repaving, maintenance, or future construction projects that'll be happening. Where applicable, and something our local DPW can use, as you will see. And just know that these are recommendations, and we'll go from there. So I'll leave it to the students.
Okay. So moving forward, any student that is, or anyone in the presentation that is speaking, please use the microphone, speak into the microphone. It is not for this room, it is for the people that are home watching on television. So if the microphone is not in front of you, they will not hear you. Okay, thank you. And that microphone comes out, right? They don't,
Do you want to just grab the floor mic and bring it on this side for the?
I mean, they don't have to be at the podium if they don't want to be. That's fine, okay, yep.
Hello. Is it on?
Yes, and you don't have to be that close.
So, hello everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to come and share our work with you here tonight. I want to thank also Amanda and the North Berkshire Community Coalition and Eamon Coughlin from Berkshire Regional Planning Commission for working with us this semester. My name is Sophia.
I'm Julia. I'm Rose.
And I'm Christina.
So tonight we're going to start by introducing everyone to what Complete Streets are. We're going to talk about the mission of our project, some of the benefits that it could bring to North Adams, our methodology, finally present to you guys the product that we created, which are redesigns of key downtown streets to make them more complete, and end with some takeaways. Complete Streets is a design philosophy that promotes safe and accessible streets for all types of users, including pedestrians, cyclists, and drivers. And this is as opposed to the dominant philosophy of designing streets from the 20th century, which really prioritized cars over other modes of transportation. And of course, as you all know, Complete Streets is also a grant from the state of Massachusetts, which North Adams has qualified for, and a policy that North Adams has adopted. Next slide.
The goal of our project was to make North Adams multimodal, which means having pedestrian and cyclist-friendly streets while also not sacrificing vehicle accessibility. We also wanted to improve linkages within downtown North Adams and promote good health through walking and biking.
So 1,400 communities across the country have adopted a Complete Streets policy, and they've really put it to practice. And the reason that Complete Streets is becoming such a talked about and such an important topic is because Complete Streets, they promote good health, they're a way to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, they can strengthen communities, they're involved in community development, and the biggest and most important reason why Complete Streets is so important is because it promotes safety. So over the past decade, we really haven't been walking more. We've only been driving slightly more, yet there's been a 35.4% increase in pedestrian deaths. And this is a really alarming statistic, and this is in large part due to the design of roads. So roads are really just designed to prioritize fast-moving cars over the safety of everyone. Yeah, and so implementing and really putting the Complete Streets design philosophy to work in North Adams is especially beneficial here because older adults are disproportionately represented in pedestrian deaths. And as you know, North Adams has a greater than average age. And so, yeah, and so in preparation and like just to support, yeah, older folks. So just to support North Adams.
Excuse.
Yes. So just to support the population of North Adams, it's really important that we that North Adams really puts these principles to work.
about what this means in practice and what streets we chose and why. So we thought of this as Main Street as kind of the spine of a complete streets network in the downtown. So really focusing on the downtown network that can hopefully later be expanded throughout the city. And so we think North Adams has really a ton of potential for complete streets, in large part because of the proximity of like important amenities and workplaces to residential areas that are pretty high density. And so this statistic is summed up by a statistic that 61.4% of North Adams residents live within just 1 mile of downtown. And the streets are also already quite wide, wider than standards recommend. So there's a really opportunity to cheaply add infrastructure that promotes complete streets. And a lot of these trips that are currently automobile trips could become pedestrian or cyclist trips if safe facilities were in place, just because of that compact downtown core.
In the 1950s, North Adams received federal funds to undergo urban renewal. The goal of urban renewal was to promote economic growth and promote vehicle traffic. Unfortunately, this displaced many historic buildings and sites and people and contributed to an economic decline for the city.
And so one of the goals of Complete Streets is to try to recreate through good design the feeling of being in North Adams before urban renewal, when streets were really more created for all types of users and not just drivers.
So how did we do this, and what information did we collect? NBCC gave us these street survey sheets that you can see here, and we had to, so we went out into the streets of North Adams. We took quantitative and qualitative measurements of the streets. So we got data like the curb to curb width. We noted the quality of the sidewalk, what signage was there, whether the crosswalks adhere to ADA, the ADA components, and we used all this information to emulate the current conditions of the streets we were interested in looking at, and also to create numerically accurate redesigns of the streets using the Complete Streets policy. And this project was really on the ground, and we were on every street we were looking into. We measured the sidewalk, the road, the crosswalks, and we were just, we were really happy to do this project because we got to know North Adams a lot more, just, really a lot more intimately. It was great. Yeah. Oh, and we really couldn't have done this project without interviewing our stakeholders. We are really grateful to Mike Canales, to Tim Lascarvo, Brett Beatty, and everyone that we worked with in collaboration. They gave us a lot of valuable information. They really inspired us, and they had great ideas.
So I want to talk a little bit about the potential that North Adams has. And so this map represents what the streets would look like in the kind of option 1 scenarios that we mocked up. So these are all scenarios that would just require a repaving. So it's essentially just restriping. The lines are moving around in different places. So it's kind of a much less cost involved in making these changes. And as you can see, a lot of benefit. So the solid purple represents bike lanes in both directions, while the dashed purple represents bike lanes in one direction and a Sharrow in the other. And the solid green is the bike lanes on Veterans Memorial Drive, and the solid blue is the proposed Eagle Street Wunderf. So as you can see, there's the potential for a really solid bike network in the downtown area at really minimal cost. Again, this is just through repaving processes that are undertaken at a regular basis anyways. So we think this is a really great way to implement complete streets in those processes that are required anyways.
So as Julia mentioned earlier, the sort of backbone of our Complete Streets network is Main Street, shown there in purple. As you all know, Main Street is really the core of North Adams downtown. It's a really lively street with a lot of great businesses where a lot of people already like to hang out. And our goals for redesigning Main Streets were to make it safer for pedestrians and cyclists, to create cycling infrastructure that would allow residents to get around and also allow tourists visiting Masmoka to actually come into the rest of downtown North Adams and patronize the shops at Main Street. So as you can see, right now Main Street is very wide. It has very wide sidewalks and also quite a lot of room for driving, with 4 vehicle lanes and parking on both sides of the street. In our option 1 redesign for Main Street, we add in a dedicated two-way bike track, and we achieve this by removing one lane of driving on the north side of the street. This will have benefits not only for cyclists and the businesses who they'll be patronizing, but also, in fact, for drivers and pedestrians, because by making that street narrower, we can achieve some traffic calming effects, which studies have shown not only reduces pedestrian and cyclist deaths, but actually reduces fatal vehicle crashes as well. Also, by making that crossing distance shorter, it makes it easier for people to get from one side of the street to another, which will especially benefit elders. And then in our option 2 redesign for Main Street, which is a little bit more costly because it requires moving some curbs, we move one of those cycling lanes to the south side of the street, which will really facilitate connections to the south side of downtown and the MCLA neighborhood. And in order to do that, we move the transit shelter to the inside of the bike lane so that there won't be conflicts between buses picking people up and cyclists, and we remove a lane of traffic on the south side of the street, further producing traffic calming effects and making the crossing safer.
Another one of the key streets that we surveyed was Marshall Street. So in the next slide, you'll see we surveyed Marshall from the overpass to St. Anthony. There are 3 driving lanes right now, each of 19 feet in width, which is almost double the recommended amount of 10 to 12 feet. Wide lanes promote fast driving speeds, which is very unsafe for drivers, pedestrians, and cyclists. So you'll see in our next slide some of our solutions to this problem.
So this is the option 1 redesign for Marshall Street, and all the changes you see here can be achieved simply through moving some lines around during like the routine repaving process. So by reducing the driving lanes from 19 feet to 13.5 feet, which is still above the recommended amount, we can add two 2-way 6-foot bike lanes, and these bike lanes are very large. The driving lanes are still very large, and just by doing these simple things, we can make it a lot easier for cyclists to get through this section of Marshall Street. And this is the section of Marshall Street that kind of goes underneath the overpass, and so we really recommend adding some lighting or some sort of light fixture down there, because it's a little bit dark and gloomy, and we've heard some folks say that the overpass forms kind of like a psychological barrier from people who are in Massamoka trying to get to downtown. So adding light here would really help facilitate movement from Massamoka to downtown. And this is the option 2 redesign for Marshall Street. It's similar to the first, except this one has little lined buffers between the bike lanes and the parking and the drive lanes, just so that cyclists are even safer with this visual barrier. And in this design, we also recommend maybe adding some raised planter beds or some equivalent, just to cheer up that area down there and encourage people to walk through it.
So lastly, our last example will be Holden Street. So this is the section between Route 2 and Main Street, and I think this is already a really lovely street that has the potential to become even more accessible to users of all types, particularly because it has all these businesses along it and the public art that already makes it really pleasant, but I think there are ways we can make it even better. So as it stands right now, the lanes are quite wide, so particularly for a small street that should not necessarily have cars moving at very fast speeds. So in our first redesign, which again would be just a restriping or repaving process, we add a bike lane in one direction and a sharrow in the other. So this is pretty simply adding a lot of bike infrastructure to this already really pleasant street. And finally, another way that we could make the street even more of kind of a hub would be to add a 2-way bicycle lane and add in raised planter beds. This would require making it a 1-way street, but there are a lot of parallel streets that connect Main and Route 2. So here you'd add those raised planter beds. That's kind of adding to this community feel to that street.
In conclusion, we encourage North Adams to take advantage of its compact downtown core and wide streets because North Adams has great potential to have more complete streets that can be achieved at minimal extra cost. It will also bring huge benefits in terms of health, safety, sustainability, and community development.
We'll be releasing our report shortly that also has a lot more redesigns, as you can see in your packets. But if you have any questions, we'd love to hear them. Thanks.
Well done.
So you want questions?
If you have any.
Any counselors have any questions for them? Counselor Buddington.
Yes, thank you very much for the presentation. I serve at the moment on the Traffic Commission, and we often find ourselves a little bit at a loss for data of what's on the ground. And for these widths that you've collected, all these measurements you've taken, do you have these in some nice database that we could have?
Absolutely. Yes, we have a full spreadsheet with all this information that we're happy to pass along.
Love a copy. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Other counselors? You're going to let them off this easy?
Great job.
Did a great
Yeah,
job.
that was really fantastic.
Counselor Hopkins.
I guess my question, what would you expect to happen with this information? Is there a process in place that we ought to be thinking about?
Yes, so North Adams has already qualified for the State of Massachusetts Complete Streets Grant, which means that you can get money to implement these projects. And there's already, I believe, a Complete Streets Committee that our client, Amanda, is on. And many of the people that we spoke to in the city and at NBCC are very involved in making this happen but in terms of our specific designs, they're meant to be sort of like a proposal that we are giving to the city to do with as you will. There are certain streets where you may find we want to do a full traffic engineering study of this. There are other designs where you could say or other streets where you might say, oh, this is kind of a cool idea, let's think about whether this might be feasible, and then maybe you like what we did, maybe not, but we hope that this can be helpful as you're going through those repaving projects, come up with some ideas.
Counselor Buddington.
Is it a safe assumption that adding bike lanes on the streets you suggest would displace the current on-street parking?
I don't believe we displaced any on-street parking in any of our designs.
Oh, they could coexist with it?
Yes.
Oh.
And that was especially, so for Main Street, that was something that we really cared about preserving because it's so important to have public parking, especially on a street like that, with so many businesses where a lot of people want to visit.
Okay. Other counselors? I'd just like to, couple things. Obviously, being down there, I think I saw you guys out there measuring one day. I think there's definitely parts of this that are great, and other things that if it moved forward to the city that would have to be considered. A couple things, while our Main Street does seem very wide, I noticed with our recent storm, we literally lost a whole lane for almost a week until they could get out there and cleared. So if it was to lose a whole lane, we would definitely have to keep it clearer faster. And then the other thing is, at the beginning of your presentation, when you said there's a 34% increase of death being hit pedestrians, I just want to make it clear, that's not North Adams.
No, that's nationwide.
And but during any of this, did you happen to pull up any local figures of, in a sense, where injuries and may have happened in North Adams, like where maybe some of the danger zones that actually did you find anything like that? That's okay if you didn't.
No, we were relying primarily on the prioritization plan that the city submitted to the state when it comes to that sort of thing. So I think there is a substantial amount of data in that report that talks about that stuff.
Great, thank you. And no other counselors? That's it, you're done. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great work.
Paper number 11,832, Mayor's Communication number 95, regarding a presentation by Williams College Environmental Workshop regarding the North Adams Transfer Station. Without objection, we'll file the communication and move to the presentation. Mayor, do you want to start this off?
I'll just set up as Amanda did with the Complete Streets, the city through the mayor's office and specifically through Mike Canales as administrative officer has been working with an environmental policy workshop from Williams to look at the transfer station and specifically issues related to the solid waste district. And they're going to present some of their findings. So I will turn it over to them at this point.
Again, same rules, speak into the mic so they can hear you at home. For agenda items, if you... All right, so, well, Zach, we're going to pass you at the moment, too. We'll just maybe get some of our agenda items, and that way they can make sure they're up and running. All right. We'll move to paper number 11,834, Mayor's communication regarding approval of the overhanging sign for property located at 55 Union Street. Without objection, we'll file the communication and move to paper number 11,834, an order granting permission to install an overhanging sign for Very Good LLC located at 55 Union Street. We have a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second. To approve, and we have a second, and discussion.
One of the first questions we always ask in planning board is, how is the sign lit? And I don't know if that's information that's available to us right now. And not that it's our purview, but I'm just curious.
Okay. I don't know if we actually have anyone here to answer that. Unless, Mayor, do you know?
It's not in the material that was included, so I don't have the answer to that.
I'm also not sure if it's already gone to the planning board. I don't remember.
Mayor, do you know if this has gone to the planning board? I don't think so, has it?
Unless it went to the meeting yesterday, and I don't have that agenda,
Okay.
I don't know.
All right, so there's two questions. Any other discussion on this?
Move to postpone.
Move to postpone? Okay.
I
Well,
think
that
it's
way,
a
we have a
motion.
motion
Yeah.
on the
I'm
floor.
sorry.
That wasn't my intent in asking the question.
Okay.
It's really the purview of the planning board
That's
to
true.
approve the signage itself. We're just confirming that they have liability insurance is what
Correct.
it amounts to.
And they did, I believe we saw the paperwork
Yep.
where they do
Yes,
have insurance.
application was complete. Yep.
Yes, Counselor Harpen.
And their application was also signed off by the city solicitor, so I'm assuming that he approved it and checked it and verified their insurance.
Still needs to go to the planning board.
What's that?
Still needs to go to the planning board.
And they'll deal with those
Right.
lighting questions.
Exactly.
Any other questions from counselors? All right, so we have a motion to adopt an order, second, and no other discussion. This is a roll call vote.
Buddington,
Yes.
Cohen,
Yes.
Harpen,
Yes.
Hopkins,
Yes.
LaForest,
Yes.
Lamb,
Yes.
Moran,
Yes.
Wilkinson,
Yes.
Bona.
Yes.
Motion passes.
And they still working on it? Yeah. Okay. Paper number 11,835, Mayor's Communication number 98, accepting a grant for the amount of $15,034 to the North Adams Police Department. Without objection, we will file the communication, and we will go to the actual paper, 11,835, in order authorizing the mayor to accept a grant in the amount of $15,034 from the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistant Program to the North Adams Police Department pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53A. Motion to adopt in order,
So moved.
Second.
and discussion. Mayor, did you want to explain anything on this?
Yeah, just for the benefit of folks in the audience and folks at home, the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant, or JAG program, allows states and units of local government, including tribes, to support a broad range of activities to prevent and control crime based on state and local needs and conditions. Grant funds can be used for state and local initiatives, technical assistance, training, equipment, supplies, contractual support, sharing initiatives, and other programs aimed at reducing crime and enhancing public safety. Chief Wood has indicated that the plan to do with this is to upgrade hardware at the police station and use the balance of the funds to look at two community programs, a community online camera registration program for businesses and residents, and a telephone reassurance software program called Are You OK? That is specifically for outreach and communication to seniors and others who are living alone.
Discussion from counselors. And I'd just like to say I'm pleased to hear about the community camera program, as that's something I've been pushing for a couple years. And I'm not sure specifically how much cost is involved in that, other than I think it probably a piece that's involved with the new website more than anything.
Minimal, but
Yeah.
within the,
But I'm glad to see
within
that
the scope
that's
of the
part
grant.
of this. Any other discussion from counselors? Not hearing any, this is a roll call vote.
Buddington,
Yes?
Cohen,
Yes.
Harpen,
Yes.
Hopkins,
Yes.
LaForest,
Yes.
Lamb,
Yes.
Moran,
Yes.
Wilkinson,
Yes.
Bona.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Motion passes. Still got a blue screen, so we'll move to paper number 11,836, Mayor's Communication number 99, accepting a grant in the amount of $36,351 from the Department of Environmental Protection. Without objection, we will file the communication. Move to the actual paper, 11,836. An order authorizing the mayor to accept a grant in the amount of $36,351 from the Sustainable Materials Recovery Program to the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection pursuant to MGL Chapter 44, Section 53A. Motion to adopt is in order.
So moved.
Second.
And discussion. Mayor?
Again, for the benefit of those who don't have the information, through this program, the city will receive access to a Mass Department of Environmental Protection funded program for the transportation and recycling of residential mattresses, as well as funding to support the purchase of a container for collecting those mattresses at the transfer station. So mattresses are certainly one of the things that fill up landfills, whether in the waste stream or in recycling. This will take those out and will give us a funding stream to deal with the disposal of the mattresses. So it's a solid program.
Counselor Cohen and Counselor Lamb?
So in order to dispose of these mattresses, you have to be part of the system through the city through a sticker to get up to the dump, correct?
Yeah, I'm gonna look to Mike, yeah.
So you can't just go up there and use the program?
Right, no, this
Okay.
would be for transfer station users.
Counselor Lamb?
I do think even though it does require you to be a sticker holder, this is something that's attractive, especially to prevent some of the illegal dumping that occurs. Because I think mattresses are amongst the top items that get illegally dumped, on the sides of roads and in the woods. And I think this is a great step towards trying to prevent that activity from continuing. So thank you for pursuing this.
Thank you.
Counselor Buddington?
If I may, through the chair to the mayor, I'd love to hear just a little bit about how we discovered this grant and got it, and whether there are more where this came from.
There's a host of programs through DEP. Last year we got a grant. I don't know if it was exactly the same program, but the one that we are gonna use to put up a swap shed at the transfer station. What I will say, just in the larger sense, is that the administration has done a lot to create what they've called a community compact portal on mass.gov. So there's greater access to information about funding opportunities across all the secretariats. So it really does make it a lot easier for us to find and identify programs.
Great.
Any other discussion? Not hearing any, this is a roll call vote.
Buddington,
Yes.
Cohen,
Yes.
Harpen,
Yes.
Hopkins,
Yes.
LaForest,
Yes.
Lamb,
Yes.
Moran,
Yes.
Wilkinson,
Yes.
Bona.
Yes.
Passes.
Motion passes. Looks like our blue screen has now red, so that's a good sign. You can wipe the sweat off your forehead and and we will move back to the original presentation. So go ahead. Yep.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having us. Thank you for bearing with us. And that was actually a great segue because we're going to be talking about the future of waste management in North Adams. I'll introduce myself. My name is Jacob.
My name is Emma.
I'm Austin. And our project was basically looking at the idea of North Adams joining with the Northern Berkshire Solid Waste Management District. So for some general background for the audience, the Solid Waste Management District is a group of 13 townships in the Northern Berkshires, that pools their resources and works on waste management programs and services together. And North Adams was one of the founding members of the district, but left several years ago. So one of our big questions going into this project was looking at the reasons why North Adams left the district and seeing if those reasons are still at play and what it might look like if we were to rejoin. So for some more background, things have just changed a lot in the past few years. And this covers the main 3 actors in the waste management changes recently. So since 2018, China basically stopped buying recycling from America, from a lot of places because it's too contaminated. And this really made recycling hard to be profitable. And then in response to this, Casella Waste Systems has been vertically integrating in the region. So Casella is a huge company with that has expanded into 6 different states, and most recently they completely bought out TAM Waste Management in Vermont and required a lot of assets from Public Services, which North Adams and the district both used to contract with. So now we're dealing directly with Casella, which is a much larger company. And then lastly, the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, as we were just talking about, is giving out a lot of grants, but they're also giving out a lot of regulations. They're trying to change a lot about the waste in Massachusetts and cap landfills and reduce the waste stream.
So for all of the reasons that Jacob was just speaking about, we've seen a huge decrease in the amount of materials that are coming through the North Adams Transfer Station today, and also therefore in the finances that are coming through the transfer station. As you can see, as we have written on the board, at the peak of the North Adams Transfer Station, we were once seeing 14,000 tons annually, and now we're doing only 4,000 tons coming through the transfer station in 2019, which has translated into a $26,000 loss in 2019. So as you can see, this is a situation that's ripe for change, and we're looking at the district as an opportunity here to kind of tackle these numbers. And then one other thing that I wanted to just kind of get into is how the transfer station works day to day. I don't know how many of you guys have been there before. I'm assuming plenty. But basically you have 2 options when you go to the transfer station. You can either pay by weight of the bag, or you can pay by bag number. So both of these options, plenty of residents use both of them. And the North Adams Transfer Station is special within the district because it's really big. We have lots of capacity at this transfer station, and this is something that's going to be important as we're going forward comparing to the other district towns.
Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about cost. So the main cost of joining the district is this $30,000 number that you see up there, and that's calculated by a per person per year basis. I think that's probably what you're most interested in, but there are also costs to not joining the district. North Adams currently doesn't have anyone dedicated to doing community and education outreach for waste management. Mike, who manages the transfer station, I think his role is mostly to make sure that it's running properly. So hiring a part-time coordinator who would be in charge of community and education outreach, which we see as important with Mass DEP regulations tightening and more coming down the line, would cost approximately $18,000 a year. Joining the district would also save costs in hazardous waste collection. Currently, North Adams does their own hazardous waste collection, and it costs $10,000 a year. But if North Adams were to join the district, it could be part of the district's collection day and save $10,000. Another component of education is reducing the contamination of waste. So last year there were a few times where waste was sent back because recycling was sent back because it was too contaminated, and it cost almost twice as much as the regular load would. And I think finally, annual inspections that the transfer station has to go through are expensive because you need to bring an external inspector in, but if North Adams were to join the district, Linda, who is the the head of the district, is sort of authorized to do those inspections. So talking about a little bit about the operational costs and how that might change following a potential merger. If you look at the permits for 2020, that is the main change. So we have it broken down as between residents, non-residents, and commercial. So the non-residents currently,
Stay close to
sorry,
the mic.
the non-resident permits currently are for other members or other citizens within the district who don't live in North Adams, but joining the district would make those two numbers the same. So it would require a slight increase of $5 a year, but joining the district, Mike also expects that there will be an increase in traffic and an increase in non-resident permits of about 10%, and that would increase the revenue that you get from those permits. Yeah, so as I was talking about, education and sort of informing North Adams citizens is one of the biggest draws of joining the district. And I think building a culture of good waste management starts in schools, and Linda does a lot of work with schools in the district, instituting the Green Team, which is a program out of Mass DEP that coordinates recycling, composting education, and events in schools. And yeah, I think we want to create a culture of proper waste management instead of forcing change through regulation, because we see it as both more sustainable in the long term and not as I get pretty much more sustainable in the long term. The other component of education is community outreach. So Linda does a lot of community events to increase the knowledge of people beyond students. She does these at the Northern Berkshire Community Coalition, for example, but as well as through posters and through sort of word of mouth at the transfer station when she goes and inspects and visits those.
So as we mentioned earlier, another big benefit to joining the district is that the city of North Adams doesn't have to run its own special collection days for hazardous waste. Basically, part of that $30,000 that goes into buying into the district becomes part of the district's budget and becomes part of the district-run, district-wide special collection days. So that's money that North Adams saves by joining this regional approach.
So this is a comparison of how much it costs to dispose of your waste at all of the towns in the Northern Berkshire Solid Waste Management District, and then North Adams is listed at the bottom. So as you can see, based on these prices, these comparisons are based on the bag tag pricing, which, as I mentioned before, at North Adams you have the option of disposing by weight or by bag tag. So for these comparisons, most of the district towns have the option of bag tags, and these prices are listed for the large bag tag prices, just for comparison purposes. But as you can see, North Adams does have a slightly more expensive bag tag price, but this is explained in the capacity that North Adams has for taking hard to recycle materials. That extra money is going towards those items. So if we were to have a merge with the district, we could expect that the towns that have less expensive waste disposal would then be wanting to take advantage of those resources here. So that's where the price discrepancy is coming from. However, we think that it would be made up for in the increase in traffic. And then in addition, the towns that charge more, for example, Williamstown, charge more than North Adams, we can expect those residents to also be wanting to come to North Adams, because if you're disposing of a lot of waste just like plenty of bags, it's sometimes cheaper to do it by weight. So actually, we did a lot of interviews with other town managers, and several of these town managers of these towns said that they prefer coming to North Adams because they get to use the by weight pricing option, which for them works better if they're disposing of a lot of bags at a time. So based on these comparisons, we expect that towns that are charging more and towns that are charging less would both be coming to North Adams, both for the weight and for the hard to recycle options.
So in respect to the hard to recycle materials, joining the district would give both residents of other towns as well as residents of North Adams who don't have a transfer station permit the ability to recycle some of these hard to recycle materials, such as mattresses, as was discussed before. It also provides a greater opportunity for grant funding, so regional charms can qualify for additional grant funding through Mass DEP. And I think finally, in regards to illegal dumping, it should decrease some of the illegal dumping of these charms.
Another potential benefit of joining the district would be to match up the hours and operations of all of the transfer stations within the whole district. So this chart is a comparison of all of the hours in each of the towns that the transfer stations are open. So as you can see, it's kind of all across the board. A lot of towns will have a midweek option and then a lot of hours open on the weekend. However, we're thinking that it would be a possibility to negotiate operation days and times to kind of balance these out all across the district. With Clarksburg and Adams so close to North Adams, and Williamstown, maybe we could offset like one of those days and say North Adams will open Wednesday morning, Williamstown can do Wednesday in the afternoon. This would decrease the costs of operations at the North Adams transfer station because we would just have to be open less, but our residents would still be able to be disposing of waste at their convenience if they would like to go to Williamstown or Adams. And then another benefit with coordinating these operations is that every year there is an inspection required of every transfer station, and currently North Adams is dishing out several $1,000s to have this done. However, with the district, the cost can be cut down to only $150, so that would be a massive cost saving. And then one last thing I wanted to emphasize with this slide is that all of this would be totally optional. There is very little decrease in autonomy if North Adams were to join the district. There's so much room to run with that if any of these ideas sound good to North Adams, we could work with Linda and make them happen. However, all of the pricing, all of the operation, that will still totally be up to North Adams, and there's a lot of flexibility here with how much you want to give to the district and how much you want to take out of it. Another huge benefit of joining the district is the grant funding. This is one of Linda's greatest strengths, in my opinion. As we kind of mentioned this before, with the grant funding with the mattresses. But in the case of North Adams, the capacity is already there to have the transfer station be identified as a charm, which, as we mentioned, is a hub for hard to recycle materials. And if you do that officially, you can get a grant, which recently North Adams, with the mattress, as we were just talking about, the mattress collection program. So there's so many more opportunities here for grant funding to be coming in. And Linda has the time and the resources to be dedicating to applying to these grants. She has a proven track record of being successful with it. 7 of her towns last year earned $500 small initiative grants from Mass DEP. And in total, she brought in $23,000 to all across the district to all these towns with all the time that she's putting into applying to these grants. Furthermore, all of that money translated into a 48% increase in 1 year in total grant funding that was coming into the towns in the district. So as we can see, Linda definitely has a strong track record of winning the grants that she's applying to, and this money would be really huge for North Adams to have at the transfer station, just a little extra room in the budget.
And then for our final benefit that we're listing, I'm just going to quickly mention the idea of composting. Composting through the district is promoting household composting with different collections for kitchens and for yards. And the benefit of composting is that it reduces the waste stream, literally just by taking food waste out of landfills and out of incinerators, which reduce costs. And in the future, there's potential for transfer station-based residential composting, and that in different counties has been shown to save thousands of dollars just within a single year. So that's a bit more down the road, but if the transfer station were to coordinate composting in the district, it could really save a lot of money.
So speaking a little bit about the future, state composting regulations are sort of expected to intensify. So currently food waste is only like large businesses that generate over a ton of food waste per week are expected to divert it from the waste stream. But in the 2030 Mass DEP plan, they expect to decrease that limit to, I think, 0.5 tons per week, which would impact a lot of small businesses. The Mass DEP is also expected to sort of tighten the enforcement of a lot of the regulations that they have already. So in the past year, brush composting costs at the North Adams transfer station increased from $12,000 to $23,000, largely because Mass DEP started enforcing a lot of the regulations that they had on book for brush composting.
So all of this is really important right now because in January 2020, both the North Adams Transfer Station and the Northern Berkshire Solid Waste Management District are going to be looking at new contract negotiations. As we had mentioned before, Casella has totally taken over waste disposal in all of the Berkshires. They've privatized really the entire process. North Adams would be increasing the population within the district by nearly 40%. So this would be huge to have just more unity with North Adams and the other towns around us all coming together to keep the prices down as we're negotiating new contracts going forward. Casella has everything else locked down, so having North Adams in conjunction with all of the other small towns around will help everyone in the Berkshires to keep their waste disposal prices down, keep these contracts local. It's just really important to have unity considering the circumstances.
So we've been talking for a while and about a lot, so I just kind of want to boil it down into a nutshell. So most importantly, when we're looking at the cost side of this slide, with the cost of joining the district minus the cost of hazardous waste collections, which are the most predictable costs that we can see in the future, joining the district will be about $20,000 per year. But then at the same time, if you're trying to hire someone to do a lot of the services that the district does, it would cost for a part-time person about the same price. So it's really cost neutral, whichever way you go. But when we look at the right side of this slide, there's so many benefits that joining the district has that you can't get just from hiring a new part-time person. And a lot of those we really want to emphasize are accessible to everyone in the in North Adams, in the city of North Adams. Like, for example, in the last item of this meeting, we were talking about the mattress grant and how that would only be accessible to people who have permits for the transfer station. Well, if the district, if North Adams and the district were to merge, then anyone in the district could come in on special days and on specific days and recycle their mattresses. So this is a benefit that all the residents have that will like open more opportunities for grant money. And at the same time, there's all the educational benefits, the community benefits, and those are for everyone in North Adams. And then separately, people who use the transfer station a lot are gonna see their services just generally improve with all those bullet points I have there. Just in general, lots of opportunities for grant money, lots of opportunities for getting more people to the transfer station. And then a really big point is that in the future, things change like we see with China, with Casella, and we don't know what it's going to be like. So having more allies in these situations is really important. And that's it.
Ready for questions? Any counselors have questions? Counselor Buddington.
I'd like to know, I'm not sure who this is a question for, but if North Adams increases the number of area residents using the transfer station, will we fall back into stricter regulation from the state authorities? Because I understand we eased up on regulations when we eliminated commercial hauling.
So what you're referring to is the fact that we went to a small transfer station permit, which allows us to take in 50 tons of solid waste. What we are talking about here is actually expanding recycling and specifically those charm items. So with joining with the districts, we wouldn't have anybody outside the district coming in to use it for just solid waste. So it shouldn't have any impact as far as our permitting.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Harpen.
Yeah, why did we originally leave the district? I don't think that was ever said to,
Yeah.
when it happened and why.
That's something that I think happened 20, 30 years ago. It's definitely been a while, and there's not like, I don't know, like there's not records of this in the library, you know, so like I'm not going to pretend to know that much, but just through interviews that we had with different people, it seems like back then the transfer station was largely like unregulated, like a lot of things were in the waste management system. So because it was so unregulated, the transfer station itself was making so much money that being part of a district had like a lot of ties and rules that at the time didn't make sense, because the transfer station was making $300,000 a year, like just standing on its own 2 feet. So to me, it seems like it was an issue of like the general regulations at the time and how they were much looser 20 years ago.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Buddington.
I was a little surprised at that number of the cost of brush management. I hadn't seen that before. Can you tell me what those, is that chipping cost or hauling cost?
Yes, that's for chipping and hauling. In the last year, regulations have required that they need to screen all the chippings to make sure there's no other trash within it. That obviously increased the amount of time, effort, and that was needed to be done by a third party, and that caused the increase in it. And that's what I think they've referred to as these regulations that continue to come down the board that we need to stay out in front of. One of the things I'll say is that I'm a little bit here as a jack of all trades, but it doesn't allow me to be a master of any one. And I think one of the biggest benefits to this is that by joining with the district, specifically Linda, this is what she masters in, and this would allow us to stay out in front to the realities of today. And just going back to your questions, the reality of then was it was in North Adams' best interest to be independent. The realities of today, with everything that has changed, I think is leading us back toward the days when we should be maybe collectively working together.
Can I follow up?
Counselor Lamb, and then Counselor Buddington.
Through the chair to Mike, actually, you can stay right up there. So kind of connecting some of the dots here, talking about composting, talking about the chipping of brush. Is that something where that brush could, in theory, become part of the composting cycle rather than being sent out in that way?
Could.
Okay.
I know the students, they have a much more detailed paper detailing a lot more than what was just presented here. We have it in a draft form. They'll be finalizing it, and the entire council will be receiving the entire report, which has a lot of, I think, questions would probably be answered through that.
Thank you.
Counselor Buddington.
That was basically my question, and I would note, just I see in the gallery quite a lot of members of Green NA who are becoming, I think, extremely well informed on issues of municipal composting. So I have some hopes for that.
Other counselors? Counselor Moran?
Yeah, I think we've seen the transfer station is no longer lucrative, and with regulations getting stricter, it makes complete sense for us to join the district. And I think we get to offer the residents more services. Part of it, hopefully, will stop illegal dumping, but also there isn't a ton of money to be made, and if we can get in front of a lot of this initiatives with mattresses, with hazardous waste, that overall regulations are only going to get stricter. We're not going to see anything become more lax, and the city has done a great job in the past 6 years in becoming certified by DEP as a transfer station, and a lot of improvements have been made. And I think probably moving to the district will continue that process that we've kind of been undertaking for the past few years. So thank you. This is super good information, and when we make decisions like this, it's nice to have real information to back it up. So appreciate it.
Other counselors, a couple things, and I don't know if this is for the students or if Mr. Canales can answer, because it's just something that's being proposed, but it looks like it's coming forward, is the state's talking about the plastic bag ban, and part of that is, and it's getting closer and closer to being signed, and part of that is a 10-cent fee, and 5 cents of that 10 cents would go back to the communities that the fees are collected. And it's noted that it is to be spent on recycling, education, and programs. Now, if being North Adams, that we have some of the larger chains and supermarkets, I would say the city would benefit more from that than, let's say, some of the smaller communities. When those fees are collected, and I have no idea, what bags are, how many would be selling, but if it's $5,000 or $50,000 the city might be getting, is that something that the city would be taking that money and doing its own programming, or can we use that money to give to TAM to cover our fees since they're doing the promotion and marketing and education programs?
As I had tried to touch on before, there's so much autonomy with joining the district. We can work with Linda, and she can help to coordinate all of these education efforts, or if North Adams would so choose to, all of those education efforts can be kept local. There's a lot of flexibility, a lot of autonomy. The money, however much money would be coming back in with plastic bag recycling grants, could be used with a lot of discretion.
We can also look into that and include it in our report that we.
Yeah, it's like what I'm curious is, again, if the city happened to collect $30,000 in plastic bag fees, could we actually use that money to then pay our fee? Councilor Lamb.
So just to that point, based on what I've read, it's fairly broad right now. It's not clearly identified in the actual regulation that might be coming through, and I think that's intentional, most likely to allow for communities to adapt based on their independent needs. So, another example in North Adams where it might be valuable is that we don't have recycling in the schools. So it might even be an opportunity for us to start to integrate that money back into the cycle so that we do have the opportunity to invest in that in the school district itself as well. So I think there's a lot of opportunities there, but I don't know that we would necessarily want to, kind of pigeonhole ourselves into one or another at this point in time.
And then you talked about composting and how it's going to businesses that currently do so much, and it's going to shrink down to a smaller businesses. Is that something that's currently enforced or required on the schools? Because I would want to think that the schools probably have one of the largest food waste of the entire city, but do you know anything, was anything discussed about the school composting?
We discussed.
Talk to the mic, please.
We discussed food composting with, I forgot what his name is, but a consultant that's working on managing school composting and instituting programs like that. But as specific to the legislation, I do not know, and that's something that we could probably look into and include in our report as well. But
I imagine it should. I know for Williams College it does. But I'm not sure how much waste we generate in comparison to some of the schools here.
So the CET Green Team program does actually have specific funds related to supporting school district compost programs. There's some in South County that are currently implementing that with the help of some consultants as well in the public school sector. So that definitely is something where there is a connective tissue piece that allows for that to be integrated into the school districts as well.
As far as you know, there's no requirement as of this point. Okay. All right. And that's it. Any other counselors? Not hearing any. Thank you for your presentation. That will move us on to the third and final presentation, not the final agenda item, but the final presentation. Paper number 11,833, Mayor's Communication number 96, regarding a presentation by the Office of Community Development regarding the outdoor theater park. Without objection, we'll file the communication and move on to the presentation, and let's see if Zach does it better.
Hey.
He's had practice.
You're quick.
Zach, same thing. I don't know if you need the microphone where you are or if someone's. What? Okay. And they just leave you. You might want to remind them you can't go without them.
Remember us?
Really loud.
Pass a resolution asking him to come back.
All right. So he says go ahead, so. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Just, I don't know, if you someone gotta run. There you go. That's good. Okay.
Yeah. Always thinking.
Good.
So I guess I don't know what how the mayor intended to introduce this, but as part of its fiscal year 2018 Community Development Block Grant program funding, the City of North Adams worked with Berkshire Regional Planning Commission to produce a feasibility study for the location of an outdoor theater park in the city's downtown, which for the purposes of the study is a 60-acre area, pretty much as shown here in the image on the screen. And as part of the scope of work for that study, it required a presentation to the City Council. And so that's what this is here tonight. So this presentation is intended to provide an overview of the project's scope of work, its relation to the city's comprehensive plan, examples of other similar amenities in other communities, as well as sort of an overview of the 5 selected potential sites included for analysis in the study. So the scope of work for this project comprised 3 phases, the first of which was community engagement. During the community engagement phase, Berkshire Regional Planning Commission conducted an online survey. This survey was sent out. It asked for community input on certain preferences as it relates to green space, the potential of green space in the downtown area. Questions asked were questions such as how large should the green space be, what amenities should be included therein, very basic questions like that. It received 78 responses. Upon closing the online survey, a round of stakeholder interviews was conducted, and 2 public forums were held, one in February and one in July. The second phase of the study included a review of existing conditions. Included in this review were analyses of downtown parking, downtown traffic, area utilities, and bike and pedestrian facilities. The findings from the various analyses were used to inform the third and final phase of the study, which was a review of site feasibility. During this phase, 5 potential locations were identified. Descriptions and pro-con lists were generated for each location, and a suitability score was assigned to each potential location, and then those were ranked in order of suitability. It should be noted, however, that the impetus for this project was the Vision 2030 plan. Within the city's comprehensive plan are several pertinent recommendations, including to reduce excessive pavement in the downtown as a means of improving pedestrian and bicycle improving bicycle and pedestrian safety and circulation throughout the downtown and between adjacent neighborhoods. This is sort of under the goal in the economic development chapter of reconnecting and rebuilding the downtown, to, as it says there, successfully eliminate the scars left by urban renewal. Additionally, it was recommended in the Vision 2030 plan that the city work to add new public green space in the downtown and to encourage programmatic connections between key anchor points as a means of improving the livability and the liveliness of the area. In reviewing the Vision 2030 plan, it was decided that an outdoor theater park, much like you see in common New England town centers, would serve to help the city strive towards achievement of these goals. And so that's where it landed there. So with these recommendations in mind, part of the study included looking at examples of similar amenities in other communities. The first one we looked at was Miller Outdoor Theater in Houston, Texas. This is a 7.5 acre outdoor theater park with lawn-style seating, state-of-the-art technology in terms of audio and visual capability. It regularly hosts theater, ballet, concerts, and cinema showings. It should also be noted that Miller Outdoor Theater is located within a much larger open space and recreational complex within Houston. Similarly is Hanahan Amphitheater in Hanahan, South Carolina. This is slightly larger than 1 acre outdoor theater park with terrace seating within another larger recreational setting. Hanahan Amphitheater is used for theater, concerts, film showings, and is also rented out for private events. Perhaps more suitable to downtown North Adams is New Center Park in Detroit, Michigan. This is located on a roughly half-acre lot in what looks to be, but I could not verify, but it looks to be the footprint of a demolished building. If you were to zoom out, you would see it's a very urban setting. New Center Park hosts concerts, various performances, and also conducts weekly film showings. It also, somewhere in there, has space for an on-site restaurant. Similar to New Center Park is the LL Bean Store Discovery Park in Freeport, Maine, another roughly half-acre outdoor park with that regularly holds concerts, performances, and film showings. What makes this a suitable example for downtown North Adams is, as the plan recommends, it converted excessive pavement in the form of a parking lot into a public gathering space, sort of improving the aesthetics of the area and encouraging people to gather. So based on the community input received, the review of existing conditions, and with these models in mind, 5 potential sites within the city's downtown were identified as 5 sites were identified as potential locations. Those sites include what we're calling, you may know these places by other names, but what the study calls River Grove Park here, the Lou Lot here, the American Legion parcel here, the Northern Movie Plex parking lot in Steeple City Plaza there, and lastly, Coal Grove Park. Each of these sites, once selected, were given site descriptions, pro-con lists, and were assigned a suitability ranking via a multivariate matrix. Variables in the matrix were scored from 0 to 3 based on a set of parameters. The variables included whether or not the location served to add new green space to the downtown as is recommended in the comprehensive plan, the location's proximity to amenities, pedestrian, cyclist, and vehicular access, and average daily traffic, among other things. These suitability scores, the scores for each variable are summed. That sum is the suitability score, and they were ranked from highest score or most suitable on down. So the site garnering the highest suitability score is the Northern Movieplex parking lot. This is a roughly 2-acre site with 189 parking spaces. It's centrally located off the south side of Main Street and has high accessibility in terms of multimodal access, car, bike, foot. Coming in second place in the ranking was the Lou Lot, located on the corner of Marshall and Main Street. This is a slightly larger than half-acre paved and developed lot. It's centrally located near parking and amenities, connects Mass MoCA to Main Street. And it should be noted that while not known at the time the study was conducted and written, this is partial conversion of this lot to green space is currently underway. I'm not sure with the snow if it's currently underway. And then third place is the American Legion parcel. This is slightly more than 1 acre paved and developed site located in the southwestern portion of the downtown. It's near Western Gateway Heritage State Park and the Holiday Inn, but one deterrent and one reason it didn't score as high as the other two centrally located sites is its close proximity to the railroad tracks. That serves as sort of a safety issue and also an ambient noise issue. If you're going to have programming that requires people hearing train right there is not necessarily the friendliest thing. Coming in fourth place is Colegrove Park. This is a nearly 1 acre city-owned green space on the eastern periphery of the downtown. It's near Colegrove Elementary School. Depending, that could be seen as an asset to some and as a liability to others, depending on one's perspective. It's also near historic Eagle Street, and overall it's an area of potential development. But what goes against this site in terms of suitability is that it does not add new green space to the downtown. It has a rather peripheral, actually a very peripheral location, as it's on the boundary. And also, it may not necessarily seem it, but this intersection here, which is quite large and confusing to both motorists and pedestrians, and then this intersection here, which according to HSIP in prior years has been identified as a crash cluster, a place of frequent vehicular accidents. So these two intersections serve as barriers to pedestrian and bicycle access. Coming in fifth place is River Grove Park. This is probably the most peripheral and least central of all locations. It's a 2.28 city-owned green space in the northwestern portion of the downtown. While it's located near to amenities like Porches Inn and Mass MoCA, it's also situated in a densely residential neighborhood. The public forums that were held were attended by residents of the neighborhood, and they indicated that any increase in traffic in the neighborhood and noise might serve as a nuisance. It should also be noted that according to MassDOT's average daily traffic counts, the western portion of the downtown sees the heaviest amount of traffic as opposed to the eastern portion of downtown. So for those reasons combined, River Grove Park came in fifth. And I do want to mention that the inclusion of a mixture of ownership, you'll notice that 3 of these sites are privately owned, 2 are publicly owned. That was a rather deliberate decision that was made to include sites that would appear from a 30,000-foot view to be optimal, but to also include sites that were city-owned in case site control couldn't be had on privately owned sites in the future. That way we at least knew which of the publicly owned sites ranked higher. And then at the July public forum, a community member suggested that we run an analysis of the parking lot north of Big Y that's owned by the Mass MoCA Art Foundation. So that was done as a sort of an addendum to the study, colloquially known as the Mass MoCA Overflow Lot. This is a 2.13 acre site with 277 parking spaces, basically an enormous chunk of asphalt. It's within walking distance, while it may not seem it if you measure it. It is within walking distance of both Porches Inn, Main Street, and Mass MoCA. And when run through the multivariate matrix, it came out with a with a score that would tie it for third place in the suitability ranking with the American Legion parcel. And with that, I would like to say thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from councilors? Councilor Buddington.
A simple one. Did you consider the traffic noise that you'd get at the Lou lot from the overpass and Marshall Street?
Yeah, the traffic, the noise, the ambient noise from both the overpass, underpass, depending on where you are, and also the intersection. It's a very crowded intersection, and that intersection in and of itself lowered that site's score as it was seen as a barrier to pedestrian and cyclist access. So those things were taken into account, and it still came in with that ranking. And you'll notice if you spend time under the underpass, not that I recommend anyone hang out there, but if you spend time under there, you'll notice that the farther away you get from the road, the lower the noise gets. It's really right up there on Marshall Street where the underpass is lowest, and where you feel the effects from the Harmonic Bridge installation the most is where it's loudest.
Councilor Harpen.
Yeah, I'd just like to mention, I grew up in this area here, so I know that there is a train that goes by the American Legion, but it also flows right behind City Hall here in the Lou lot. So it's the same train that you're going to hear at the American Legion that you probably hear at the Lou lot.
And
as
that also, the Lou lot did not score high on ambient noise. That was one of its most poorest performing variables. But it seems as though it would be less of ambient noise would be less of a factor there than on the American Legion parcel, because there is distance and obstruction between the railroad tracks and the street there. So.
And also, I just one other question.
Councilor Harper and Councilor Moran. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Councilor Moran.
Was there any discussion about any of this being multi-purpose? It seems like a theater would be more like a summer, fall, seasonal thing. What about something like a outside ice skating rink for the winter time?
So this study really focused on identifying suitable locations and their feasibility for the siting of an outdoor theater park. If you look at some of the sites, certainly like the Massimoka Overflow lot, which is 2 acres, the Northern Movieplex parking lot, which has some slope issues, but is quite large, there is opportunity for multi-purpose use in the majority of these sites, but the study did not get into design specifics. It just looked at where could an outdoor theater park be located. But the intent there is a multi-purpose use, because more uses mean more people. Bringing more people into the downtown means more economic activity, means the area improves. It leads to all of these positives.
Okay.
So that would be a part of, should the city seek to continue this project into the next phase, which would be design engineering, those issues would be more fully vetted and included. So.
Councilor Moran.
With the North Cinema lot that's privately owned,
Yep.
I'm not sure if you're there yet, but has there been any conversation with the current owners?
No,
so
there's
this is just pie in the sky.
Right now, this is, I wouldn't say pie in the sky. That kind of shines a less than optimal light on its potential. But I would say we're not at that point yet where we wanted to conclude the feasibility phase of the project before entering into any discussions with private owners about site control. And then once those discussions have been had, then it would move on to design engineering, where multiple considerations would be made as to what's included in the park.
Councilor Buddington.
Not sure if my opinion matters at this point, but I would love to see this go forward. Like I think a public gathering space for performances that's easily walkable from downtown would just be almost the best possible use for one of these lots. And I think they all look like decent choices to me. And I think that analysis looks like you've taken a lot of the important things into consideration. So
thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Other councilors. I want to say I'm glad you did include the overflow lot behind Mass Mocha's. You know, I guess one thing I guess I'm still having a hard time digesting is that, you know, part of this ranking, like I say, doesn't include what can be easily acquired. So like you say, we know if it's a city-owned property, it's basically us saying, yeah, okay, as a city, we're willing to use it. But when you look at your...
actually, not to interrupt,
Yeah.
Council President Bona, but if you look here, ownership is taken into consideration as a variable.
Yeah.
And so a site that is owned by the city scores a 3. A site that is owned by the city and highly unlikely to be made available to the city would gain a 0. So that was taken into consideration here.
And a site that is not owned by the city?
Private, I think, yeah.
Private?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, the number one ranking still was the Steeple City Plaza lot. And what's interesting about that is if you look where you drew your line, you're basically taking all the parking away from the several businesses that are
Not
in.
necessarily. I mean, what you're looking at is you're looking at an outline of an entire parcel.
Right.
There are 2.03 acres there. Now, it might be decided in the design engineering phase, if site control were acquired, that maybe this little triangle here, sort of the eastern half, would be converted to an outdoor theater park. Now, the city, in addition to this study, the city also began through the Mass Downtown Initiative a parking study in July of this year. That study will be wrapping up shortly, and you'll all be receiving a presentation on it, probably in January, somewhere around there. But that study demonstrated that all parking lots south of Main Street are well below optimal utilization, and so that would support that the businesses in this area through like shared parking agreements or other means would have ample parking based on current utilization. But this is not intended to say that this entire parcel here, this entire parking lot, is going to be acquired with the intent of becoming a 2-acre park. I believe the survey results indicated that somewhere between a ½ acre and 1 acre would be optimal for this type of park.
Does that take into account also, because you heard the term pie in the sky, and you may say like, no, there's some realistic that this possibly could happen, right? It is a possibility, but at the same time, if you look at the GCAM's proposal, they would say the same thing. They have a plan for that whole lot, and they
which
could
includes
say,
green space in this
what's
area.
that?
Which includes green space in this area.
Okay, so that could still fit within their plan.
I think without having fully discussed it with representatives of that organization, I would think that any partnership with the city would further their plans, especially as it pertains to green space, as green space is not necessarily profitable space.
And again, I want to thank you for including the overflow lot, and same thing with that. You wouldn't have to use the whole lot. You could use the east side, so it still leaves a good portion of overflow.
When you look at it, this is actually a really, from a design perspective, this could be a really interesting park with the river right there. You could maintain roughly half the parking and still have the amenities. It's an interesting lot.
Good. I'm glad that was there. And then to go in the next phase, would at that point you need to start locking in, can we buy or actually have that land?
Yeah, before entering into any design engineering contract, we would want to have site control for any sites that we don't currently have it, as you want to know what you're designing, what your constraints are when designing.
Yep.
Otherwise, why bother?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other from the counselors? Not hearing any. Thank you for your presentation.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And let's see, we have a couple of these we've already done. 837.
Safe routes.
Paper number 11,837, Mayor's Communication number 100, accepting a Safe Routes to School grant in the amount of $598,255 from the Massachusetts Department of Transportation. Without objection, we'll file the communication. Move to the paper 11,837, an order authorizing the mayor to accept the grant in the amount of $598,255 from the Safe Routes to School program of the Massachusetts Department of Transportation pursuant of the MGL Chapter 44, Section 53A. Motion to adopt is in order.
So moved.
Second.
And discussion. Mayor, do you want to start this off?
Sure. So we've talked about this project in the abstract in the past. The school district, the city, and Mass in Motion did a number of pieces of work to get to this point, including some Safe Routes to School analysis of traffic patterns, pickup, drop-off at peak times and conditions around the Brayton neighborhood. And when the opportunity to look at the Safe Routes to School program, we felt that this area was the optimal one to look at for some streetscape, some safety, some sidewalk, some traffic management, and some crosswalk improvements. And that's the case that we made to MassDOT, and they accepted our case and our rationale. And so we're at the point now of accepting the grant so that we can move into, or MassDOT with the city can move into the project development or the construction development phase of the project. Just a few background points. We are one of 14 municipalities across the Commonwealth that was chosen for the grant. I can't tell you who the other 13 were at this point. And the vision of the project really is on safety, accessibility, walkability, bikeability. And we know that some combination of sidewalk work, infill, intersection and crossing improvements, shared use paths and bike accommodations will be part of the project going forward.
Thank you. Any discussion from councilors? Councilor Lamb, Councilor Moran.
I'm just noting abstention due to family connection to the project. My wife helped write the grant. That's,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Councilor Moran.
And this is on top of the park grant that was also received.
This is on top of the park grant, yes.
So that's a considerable amount of money that's going to that.
To that area.
That's great. Thank you.
Other councilors? Councilor Buddington.
I mean, this may be not a useful use of time, but congratulations. I mean, this is great.
And since Councilor Lamb introduced the topic, Emily Schiavone in the school district, Mike and Amanda Chilson were all instrumental in supporting the work and helping to not only make a good case for the grant, but again to do those analyses at every school, but using the data that they got from their Safe Route to School observations to inform the grant application.
Other discussion? Not hearing any. This is a roll call vote.
Buddington,
Yes.
Cohen,
Yes.
Harpin,
Yes.
Hopkins,
Yes.
LaForest,
Yes.
Lamb,
Abstention?
Moran,
Yes.
Wilkinson,
Yes.
Bona.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Motion passes. I believe we have them all, right? We didn't miss any. So that brings us to committee reports and minutes. Not hearing any. Licenses, we don't have any. Open forum. Anyone wish to speak in open forum? 2 minutes, please. Who's going first?
Yes, Brian Sapienza, 113 Pleasant Street. I want to commend the students from Williams College on their presentation of the Complete Streets presentation. One concern I do have by narrowing some of the city streets, especially Marshall Street, is you have the confluence of a couple of major state roads, routes 2 and 8. And I just get concerned with the amount of truck traffic that comes through there. Will that make it more difficult, especially when you have 55-foot tractor-trailer trucks or 53-foot tractor-trailer trucks moving through the city at that point? I noticed that some of the intersections, and that intersection in particular, we've lost a traffic light pole numerous times because of tractor-trailers trying to negotiate that corner. And by narrowing the streets, I was wondering if that would make it a little bit more difficult in trying to navigate through the city. And I just wanted to pass that on. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else during? Yes, Mr. Smith.
Robert Smith, 140 Pleasant Street. I was going to talk on that as well. But you know, around where Mr. Bona has his shop, that side street is generally delivery areas for those big trucks. And if you try to narrow that street, you're not going to have traffic going by the other way. The other thing I want to mention is I'm happy about the grants, and but we can't stop there. We have to, our city has to not always rely on grants. We have to make it better for ourselves by selling the city properties and only accepting offers that are firm where there's cash in hand. So I'm hoping that the January council that comes in works with the mayor so that we can sell these properties and entice people to come in and fill those storefronts. I congratulate the mayor for his past 2 years here. He's moved the city forward, and I appreciate that. And I also want to commend the city council. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else during open forum?
My name is Eric Wilson. Where do I live? Oh, Brighton Hill Terrace. I wanted to mention that I'm glad we got mentioned this and putting the city forward. I've been doing stuff around the city, and I'm glad we're gonna make sure nothing clean up our area and recycle, and I'm for the recycling with the presentation that we just had. And we really need that. We need to keep our street clean. We don't need it. It will hurt people. If we all work together, we'll keep the cost down. I'm all for all that. And I'm thinking about people with disability in the community and beyond it, the board, and we're coming along. Well, this month we're not going to do anything until next year because it's Christmas season. So I am glad. Thank you for you and the mayor too. And I think we're going to have a lot of people come here, and it's going to be great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So you going to pass a pot around to collect funds?
Mike Canales, Myers Avenue. I just coming forward because the Kids for the Youth Center Inc., their Mass DEP Green Team made ornaments, they're recycling containers for the city council. So on your way out, please take one to place on your tree.
Thank you.
Sweet.
We'll go with Ms. Sweeney. Yeah.
Jessica Sweeney, 190 Prospect Street. I just wanted to share that Common Folk on Main Street has seen over 5,000 visitors in this year, and that's not including December numbers. And I just want to reiterate that a lot of that traffic happens after 4 p.m. We are open most days after 4 p.m., 4 to 8, and we've been tracking diligently our visitorship. If anyone on council would like to discuss those numbers at length, it's duplicated numbers, of course, but still I think traffic is really important on Main Street, and I'd like to continue that effort. So if anyone would like to talk about that, let me know.
Thank you. Yes.
So Tony Pisano from Front Street. Even though they're gone, I'd like to thank the Williams College students for the presentations they gave. I'm part of Green North Adams, so I'm interested in the whole composting thing, and we actually toured the landfill or the transfer station with Mike. And couple things I saw was it'd be great, and I know city has limited budget, but to have better observation of what people are throwing away and where they're throwing it, because during the time we were up there for maybe an hour and a half or so, and I mean we pulled out bags of trash from the recycling containers, and metal that people were throwing into that if, is it Chad, the operator? Chad Columbus, so he's great. Noticing that people are throwing things that are metal that can be recycled. And question I have, does anyone know, does the city get paid for the recycling? Okay, so when metal recycling gets picked up, the city makes money. So stuff that gets pushed into the container costs the city money. So if you can keep good track of what's getting thrown away and what's getting recycled, that really helps. The other thing with as far as streets goes, I think some of the streets can be narrowed because, I mean, when I go down Main Street, I notice that people think it's like a speedway. I mean, people shouldn't go faster than 15 or maybe 20 miles an hour at the most on Main Street. So narrowing the streets would help with that. And I'm also part of the bike collective with Amanda and Josh. So we have space at the Armory, and we actually met this past Monday night. So we meet on some Monday nights whenever people are available to actually repair bikes that are mostly donated. So hopefully get more people. In fact, we probably have enough bikes for everybody in here. Get you riding around North Adams, and we have the downtown bike around the summer, which a lot of you have seen. So it's to raise awareness of people on bikes in the city. So bike paths are needed, and pretty much any thriving town that you go to has bike paths.
Okay, thank you.
So thanks.
Anyone else during open forum? Yes.
Henry Yeski, 62 Chase Ave. I'd like to wish everybody a happy holiday, and I also like to thank Williams College for their presentation, and I also like to congratulate the old counselors and the new counselors coming in the first year. Thank you.
Anyone else? Not hearing anyone. That brings us to mayor's concerns.
We're going to have a couple quick things. 2 project updates that the council president requested last time with regard to Notre Dame. That team is working on their due diligence. There was some ground lost on both sides due to some communication and some back and forth between our attorney and their attorney. So we anticipate that we'll move to a close in the spring. We're looking at mid-May as the hard close date on that project. With regard to the public safety roof, that project is in progress. It began September 30th. The contractor at the time initially projected a 4 to 5 week project. At this point, significant work remains to be performed in order to achieve substantial completion based on the scope of the contract that the city entered into in good faith with the contractor. So the work that's been done to date is considered at best a temporary installation. Winter is here, you may have noticed, and due to the arrival of those conditions, we're concerned about the suitability of this temporary installation as it stands. I'll say really clearly, I'm not satisfied with the work or the responsiveness of the contractor to date. Between the city and Bradley Architects, we've reviewed the construction documents, the scope of the project, and the current site conditions, and we've compiled our list of outstanding critical path work to be completed in order to achieve that substantial completion. And folks from Bradley and the city will be meeting with the contractor this week to review the list and hear from the contractor their plan to bring that to substantial completion and close out the project. So after that meeting, I'll be able to say more, and I'll be able to report more at the next meeting about where everything stands, but that's where we are at the moment. As Mr. Yeski mentioned, we're going into the holiday season. You may have seen, if not, I want to announce and invite everyone in the council and in the community to City Hall this Friday at 4:15. The Kids for Harmony program will be performing for the second year in a row. Last year we discovered just how good the acoustics in the lobby are. They're absolutely fantastic. I know the kids are excited, and I'm really excited to welcome them back to City Hall. With the holidays, I wish everyone happy holidays. I want to thank the city team. That's Public Services, that's Wire and Alarm, that's Public Safety, that's Community Events, who was involved in organizing the tree lighting. I want to thank the donors of both of our trees. They are pretty spectacular. And as always, the Jury Band and Band Front provided some great music for the tree lighting. I will say on a personal note, I have never been so happy in my life as when the thunder and lightning flashed on the day before Thanksgiving and justified the decision to postpone the tree lighting to last Friday when the weather was absolutely perfect for it. So again, Merry Christmas to everyone who celebrates, and just to note that we will be lighting the city menorah on December 22nd, the first night of Hanukkah. And although, again, there is another council meeting before that, I offer early good holiday wishes to everyone. Thank you.
All right, that brings us to liaison updates or councilors' concerns. Do we have any? Councilor Buddington, Councilor LaForest.
I will not be able to make the next meeting, so this will be my last meeting on the council. I just wanted to quickly thank the city clerk, both of our city clerks, in fact, and as well as our former city clerks. But on top of that, I found that the department heads have always been great about giving me as much education as I had time to absorb from them. And as much as I've got things right, it's been because of that help in correcting mistakes before I make them, especially from the clerk's office, and I appreciate that.
Anyone else? Councilor LaForest, sorry.
I was just going to suggest that perhaps we should put the mayor's update of the roof of the public safety building on the agenda so that we can ask questions and deliberate as necessary for the next meeting.
You can put a communication on too if you wish.
Well, right,
we
but
can
I
talk.
know you would request
right,
it.
That's
so
fine. That's fine.
okay.
Yep. Okay. Councilor Moran.
Just real quick on the two presentations that we had from Williams College. One, complete streets. As we move forward with bike paths throughout the city, this is an extremely affordable way to pick up miles of bike path, not needing assistance from others. In regards to the transfer station, I think we've seen a huge involvement spike with the green team, and I think what we're noticing that in order to make North Adams greener is it takes more than just Mr. Canales trying to enforce. It really takes the community to step up and help facilitate, how we want to move forward. So thank you for everyone that's had their hand in making the transfer station a bit greener.
Other councilors? Couple things. Since we were talking about the mattresses tonight, I just want to pass along, which I just did it last month. If you go to Mass Save or masssave.com, you are able to fill out a simple form if you have an old freezer or a refrigerator in your house that's old but still running or just been unplugged. It has to be running, and it has to be between 10 and 30 cubic feet. They will come pick it up for free and send you a $75 check. I did it. I got the check. You don't have to go buy another one, so it was nice. And it's part of getting you to get rid of your older freezers and refrigerators to be to maybe purchase more energy efficient ones, but you actually don't have to buy a new one if you don't want. And that is also for residential and commercial, and that is through masssave.com. Mayor, thank you for giving us some updates, at least on the questions. I'm going to add a couple things, and again, if these are answers, you can get back to us either next meeting or email or however. But two is, then since the council with the Notre Dame actually gave a 1-year deadline for our approval of the process, is it still, I'm going to say yes, since it seems to be forwarding, but does the council have to approve an extension? Because, our deadline for the bid passed in August or September. So that's just a question. I don't know if there's a legal answer to that. And then second, maybe next meeting or the near future, an update on what's going to happen, where the RFP is for the Mohawk. Okay, thank you. And that ends it. I want to wish everyone our next meeting is going to be the Thursday, December 26th, the day after Christmas. So it's going to be 2 days after our normal meeting. I wish everyone happy holidays, but not a happy new year yet, as we can do that at the next meeting. Councilor Buddington, sorry we won't see you at the next meeting. So again, thank you for your time served. You will be missed, but I have a feeling you're not done participating with the city. I know.
Heckle.
But yeah, you'll probably be in the audience, and I do know you expressed that you still want to be on the traffic commission, and
Wherever I'm needed.
and if there's a commission that starts for the bees, we will let you know, for the pollinators. And thank you. And we have no correspondence and need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? Do we? Second.